everybody, and welcome to Cooking Uncovered. And tonight I am in my school in Burnaby, and I'm going to teach my students one video how to clean a slicer and how to use a slicer. So this is just a normal commercial slicer, but the first thing I do before I clean it is, of course, I unplug the slicer. Now, if you don't have control of your plug, you need to do what's called a lockout procedure. So for example, if this plug was in another room, I'd have to go to the other room, I'd have to put a lock box on top of this, right around it, and lock it on so that somebody else was not to plug the slicer in when I'm cleaning it, when I have my hands on the slicer. So, slicers on plug. Secondly, I have to choose one of these cut-resistant gloves that I'm going to wear to clean my slicer. There's many sizes, many styles, white, green, red, and I'm going to just use one of them because it's going to be very important while I'm cleaning to make sure that I have gloves on. I do not want my hand in contact with the sharp blade. So I wear a glove on my wiping hand. All right, very first thing you do is on the slicer, there's many parts. This is the weight that pushes when you put your meat down here, this pushes your meat down so that it can be cut. This is the slide tube. Around here is the dial, and the dial has to be set to 0 when you are to 0, this point here, when you are cleaning the blade. Now, I want you to show this because every time I move this dial, you notice this blade, this part here, gets bigger and bigger. So obviously if you're going to move this way, you would slice your hand off, so you've got to be very careful. So back down again on the dial. I'm going to turn it back all the way to 0, and now you know the blade is flush and it's closed. Now we can clean the slicer. So the first thing you do is you make sure your dial is in at 0. Second thing you do is over here, you make sure that you've got by the slicer your bucket of hot soapy water. I have a second bucket just with a sanitizing solution, and I have a bus pan ready to put in the equipment that I have to take away to the sink to clean. So back to the slicer now. I'm going to remove the slide guard. So I'm going to simply undo this like this. Just undo it and it goes into the bus pan. Off goes my slide tube into the bus pan. Now I'm going to double check to make sure my dial is on 0, and it is on 0, so now I can proceed. And as you see, there's bits of food all over this slicer. Now I'm going to lift my gloved hand. I'm going to take my hot soapy water, and I'm going to start to clean the slicer. Now, if there's any big parts, any big pieces of meat or cheese, you need to remove those first into your hand, and they go into your either bus pan or your bucket. So get rid of the big pieces. Now, on this side, I have what's called a guard on the back side, and this guard prevents your cheese and meat from actually getting behind the blade. So this guard comes off, and this has to be washed. So I'm going to put that into my hot soapy water. Now, to the front of the slicer, over here is this is called the blade guard. Now this blade guard also has to come off. So the dial is in the back, and it's you loosen it by going counterclockwise. You keep on loosening it. Loosen, loosen, loosen. It comes out, goes into your hot soapy water, and this blade guard, notice these handles? This is how you take the guard off the blade. You have to be very careful. Blade guard is off, and this dirty blade goes into your bus pan for washing. Now the blade is exposed. At this time, if I had to move away from the slicer for any reason, Either I have to put the guard back on, or I put a red cloth on, signifying to people, danger, 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 don't touch this, it's exposed, the blade is exposed. So now I'm going to carry on with my cleaning. I'm going to take my hot soapy water, and with the cloth, I have my hand on the other side of the blade to hold it still, and I clean in a circular motion. Be very careful to always clean towards the center, out, center, out. Don't clean from the outside in. You do not want to come in contact with the sharp blade. So you can clean your center, making sure all the food is removed. Center out, center out, center out. Be very careful not to touch the exposed blade. Now, on the back side of the blade, on the back side, you also have to clean the back side of the blade. So for this, I have to obviously put on a glove as well, because now I'm changing hands. Now the cloth, the cleaning cloth, is coming on the other hand. And we have to just clean the back side as well. Again, rotating the blade, but not putting my hand in any way in danger of touching the outside of the sharp blade. This piece of equipment is called the sharpener. This also has to come out on a daily basis to be cleaned underneath. And you would clean this by using a brush and your hot soapy water, and you would clean under all the dials, because this becomes full of debris, meat, cheese, tomatoes, whatever it is you're slicing. I would finish cleaning that, and I would sanitize it. And I just leave it on the counter to dry. So in the back of the blade, I would take my brush, and in behind my brush, very carefully, I want to remove all the debris and all the food from behind the blade. Any food here that gets trapped, this is what your brush is for. That goes back in here. Now, I continue to clean the back, sides, the front, the dial, underneath. Now, if this slicer, which is a chef made, it might get debris under this plastic guard here. If their food becomes attached under this guard, then you need to get a sharp knife or the back of a knife and get that food out. But right now it's fine. So I continue to clean. Once I've cleaned the whole slicer, being very careful never to touch the blade, all the food is removed. Now I use my sanitizing bucket. This is my sanitizing solution. Now I sanitize the whole slicer. Same way, starting with the blade holder. Sanitize the blade. And the best thing for the slicer is that if you have a wet cloth, you should go over it with a dry cloth. So I cleaned the front, bottom, all the food is off now. All right, the first thing you do now is you've washed your guard. Now, the first thing on, so those have been washed and sanitized. That's good. I need a cloth. Excuse me for a minute. I'm just going to walk over here. Before I put my guard on, I'm just going to wipe the excess water off the blade, because you don't want it to sit with excess water. So now your slicer should be absolutely shiny. Completely shiny, completely clean. And carefully. Now, at this point, if you get distracted, do not turn away from the blade, because you have an exposed blade. It could be very dangerous. And believe me, this can really cut your fingers, so you have to be very careful. All right, the guard goes back on with the two handles. And notice I still have my cleaning mitts on. With the two handles, the guard slips into place. There's a notch down here. Do you see that? See the notch? It sits on this little lever here. It's right there. See that? It slips into place. It's into place. Now, my screwing device, it's the bolt that keeps it in place, is sanitized and dried. Now it goes into place, and I just screw that on, but you do not screw it on so tight that you can't get it off. You just till it's tight enough. So that's on and it's tight. Again, we're going to remove the excess water. Now, you're going to take your slide tube and put that on. Put that on your machine and tighten your machine. Again, only until it's tight enough so you can manually slide it back and forth, and it's just tight enough. And let's just check this. That's done too. So now your slicer is done. Your sharpener that has been cleaned now goes back on. Be very careful when you do that. That goes into place, and again, there is a bolt in the back that you screw that on, and that's in place. Now you're ready to make sure that all of your counters around the slicer are clean. So now I can remove my gloves. My gloves come off, they're going to be dried. Now it's time to clean the counter. So I take the slicer, I move the slicer, and I clean the counter underneath, so that there's absolutely no debris. So that is how you clean a slicer, especially in a commercial kitchen. It's really important to stay safe. You always work safe first. So please be very careful when you're using a slicer. Thank you very much. It's Miriam from Cooking Uncovered. Bye.